The Reverend Samuel Leigh arrived in Sydney on the 10th of August 1815 and became the first Wesleyan missionary appointed to Australia. Born in Milton, Staffordshire, England, Leigh was sent to New South Wales in answer to an appeal for a missionary by Methodists there. He waited upon Governor Macquarie, who gave him little encouragement at first, but afterwards said, "I believe your intentions are good, and therefore you may expect from me every encouragement you desire." So Reverend Leigh set to work to found the first Methodist church in a community almost wholly given over to drunkenness and immorality. It was a common thing to see scores of men, women and children before the magistrate for drunkenness and receiving the sentences of 6 hours to the stocks, 10 days to the cells, 20 days to the treadmill, or 50 lashes. Sergeant James Scott of the New South Wales Regiment gave Reverend Leigh the use of his house for weeknight services, and soon afterwards classes were formed at Parramatta, Windsor and Castlereagh. In a letter to the Home Committee asking for a missionary to be sent, they had misread the additional request for furniture for a house as horse, and accordingly the new Reverend Walter Lawrie brought with him a good second-hand military saddle with bridle and other fittings. Reverend Leigh took the saddle as a sign and included the cow pastures, now called Camden, in a round of 14 places, a trip of 150 miles and 10 days, starting from Sydney. It was truly fortunate that the missionary was unmarried. The saddle and military brass were well used and of good service, though he says that on his long journeys in the sun, they became too hot for the hand to touch them. Preaching at Mr. John Lee's in Castlereagh on a Wednesday evening, he rode hence across the country. Very rough, some of it, about 30 miles, travelling by the sun and carrying an axe, at least the first time, to clear his way in places through the thick scrub, resting for the night and preaching at Macquarie Grove, the Christian homestead of Mr. H, situated on a high bank of the river and with easy view of the present town of Camden. On one of these journeys, he lost his way in the bush, till at length, exhausted, the horse brought him at last to the hut of a stockman who was feeding some poultry in front of his door, with cobs of Indian maize. Asking for something to eat, the man said that his master was away and he was not allowed to give anything in his absence. Reverend Leigh dismounted and then, unhindered and starving, joined the fowls in their meal and said that he felt refreshed, strengthened and grateful. Then, obtaining fresh instructions, reached Liverpool late that evening. In a letter to a friend, he adds, "The Indian corn that I'd eaten with the fowls made me ill for a fortnight. My constitution will not long stand so much work, but what can I do?" People flocked to hear his preaching, some with chairs and stools on their shoulders to sit on. In one place, he mentioned sleeping out with his saddlebag for a pillow. He was brave and kind in spirit. He performed his difficult mission wisely, well and faithfully. Difficulties disappeared before him. He carried light and comfort and salvation to many hearts and humble homes in that dark and difficult time. He visited all classes, ministered with the word of divine love and pardon to criminals about to be executed. There were many of them in those days, half a dozen or more at a time. He formed Methodist societies and built the first 3 or 4 of the churches in the land. Anticipating the church's coming greatness, he said, "We must not despise the day of small things. What can one missionary do in such a country as this? I have seen many tears of penitence and of joyous welcome for the word, and then I ceased to feel fatigued. A poor man walked 14 miles to converse with me about his soul. I travelled 20 miles to preach to 20 persons, then retired to rest with 10,000 blessings and go off again in the morning singing for joy. In 1820, Reverend Leigh's health broke down and he returned to England, where he convinced the Methodist Missionary Committee to establish 2 new missions, one to New Zealand and the other to Tonga. He returned to New South Wales, and in 1822 he went to New Zealand, where he founded a Methodist mission. He returned to England in 1831 and died in 1852 at the age of 66 years. In 1977, the Methodist Church became part of the Uniting Church of Australia, and Frontier Services took responsibility for its missionary work. Born in a little community on the shores of Sydney Cove, the Methodist Church expanded its churches by the 1,000 and its members by the 100,000. From being an unconsidered section of the Christian church, it grew to be a powerful factor in the religious, social and political life of the Australian people.